The autumn sunlight in Boston cast a golden glow on the glass windows of the skyscrapers. Eleanor Williams gazed out of her office's large window while finishing her signature on the quarterly financial report. As the finance director of McKinsey International, Eleanor stood at the pinnacle of a career she had built over 10 years. "Eleanor, excellent work," Martha, the CEO's secretary, said as she knocked and entered. Martha had been Eleanor's confidant since she joined the company and was now someone she could call a true friend. "Thank you. I've finally wrapped things up," Eleanor replied with a smile. "By the way, your phone was ringing." "It looks like a message from your sister," Martha pointed to the cell phone on her desk. Eleanor's expression clouded momentarily. It was unusual to hear from Linda. The sisters rarely kept in touch. They had been complete opposites since childhood. Eleanor was the serious, diligent, model student type. Linda, on the other hand, was sociable and flashy, growing up as the apple of their parents' Raymond and Judith's eye. "I wonder what it is," Eleanor muttered softly as she picked up her phone. The screen displayed a message with a photo. A white ribbon was tied around Linda's belly button with the words, "We're having a baby," dancing across the image. An additional message read, "I'm having a baby shower next month. Of course, you're invited." "Linda's pregnant," Eleanor said matter-of-factly. She was trying to suppress her emotions, but there was a slight tremor in her voice. Martha immediately understood what this meant. "Are you all right?" Eleanor took a deep breath and forced a smile. "Yes, of course. It's wonderful that my sister is becoming a mother." But her mind was being pulled back to an incident 2 years ago. That fall down the stairs, which had been explained to the family as an accident. And the baby she had lost. The words her mother Judith had said when she woke up in the emergency room still echoed in her ears. "It was your own carelessness. What were you thinking, rushing up the stairs like that?" No one had comforted her. No one had tried to understand her wounded heart. Eleanor had continued to blame herself. If only she had been more careful. If only she had been more cautious. "Eleanor?" Martha's voice brought her back to reality. "Sorry, I was lost in thought," Eleanor smiled. "Linda got married last year, didn't she? I believe her husband Brad is an investment banker. My parents must be thrilled." Martha placed a hand on her shoulder. "You don't have to accept the invitation." Eleanor shook her head. "No, I plan to go. They're family, after all." That evening, Eleanor sat in her apartment living room, deep in thought with a glass of wine in hand. Her relationship with Linda was complicated. Since childhood, their parents had treated Linda specially. When Eleanor achieved excellent grades in school, her mother would say, "All you do is study, don't you have any friends?" When Linda was on the verge of failing, she was consoled with, "Don't try to be like your sister, just be yourself." Eleanor picked up her phone and replied to Linda, "Congratulations. I'll definitely be there." Staring at the screen, Eleanor made a decision. She would use this baby shower as the first step toward mending her relationship with her family. She would let bygones be bygones and make a fresh start. The next day, Eleanor was selecting a present for her sister at an upscale department store. She picked up a top-of-the-line baby set and asked the clerk to wrap it. She didn't forget gifts for her parents either. On the day Eleanor was heading to the baby shower, Martha said, "I'll go with you. I'll support you no matter what happens." "You don't need to worry," Eleanor laughed. "I'm just going to celebrate my sister's happiness." Martha took out her smartphone from her bag and said, "Just in case, I'll take this with me. If anything happens, I'll record it." Eleanor smiled wryly at her friend's excessive concern. "It feels like we're heading to a battlefield." But she couldn't deny the anxiety she felt inside. As she got into the car, Eleanor took a deep breath. Well, let's go. The two of them drove toward the upscale suburban neighborhood. Dressed in a sapphire blue dress, Eleanor stood at the entrance of Linda's mansion. Martha smiled quietly beside her. "You're nervous," Martha whispered. Eleanor took a deep breath. "It's fine. Today is a special day." When she pressed the doorbell, Linda herself, dressed in a glamorous party dress, greeted them. "Oh, so you came," Linda's voice was cheerful, but her eyes were cold. "Everyone, Eleanor is here." As she entered the living room, it was overflowing with Linda's friends and relatives. Pale pink and blue balloons floated gently toward the ceiling, and a large banner reading "Congratulations, William's baby" decorated the wall. When Eleanor entered the room, conversation momentarily ceased. She noticed faint expressions of surprise and pity on several faces. It was a reaction she knew well. "Eleanor?" Her father Raymond's voice came from across the room. With salt and pepper hair, he wore his usual refined smile. "Glad you could make it." "You look well, Dad," Eleanor kissed him on the cheek. This is her older sister, Judith introduced Eleanor to Linda's friends. She works in upper management at Mackenzie International. She's always so busy, she rarely comes to family gatherings. There was a subtle reproach in those words. Eleanor sighed deeply inside. This was nothing new. "It's an honor to meet you," a woman said. "Linda has talked about you often." Eleanor smiled, but inwardly wondered what Linda had been saying about her. The thought pained her. Standing before the lavish food laid out on the table, Eleanor remembered past family gatherings. At her high school graduation party, her parents had invited Linda's friends, but turned away Eleanor's friends citing space constraints. When she won a college scholarship, her father had said, "Remember to cherish true wealth, human relationships that money can't buy." It felt as though he was belittling her success. And then a memory buried deep in her heart resurfaced. Christmas, 2 years ago. Eleanor had visited her parents' home to announce her pregnancy to the family. But as she was about to climb the stairs, she heard her mother and sister's voices behind her. "What will happen to us if Eleanor has a child too?" Linda had said. "She's already successful in her career." "Don't worry," her mother's voice was low but clear. "You're the special one." Immediately afterward, Eleanor had felt a strong force pushing her from behind. Her memory was blank until she woke up in a hospital bed. The doctor explained it as a fall down the stairs, and she lost her baby. The family called it a careless accident, and there were no further questions. Eleanor continued to blame herself. But now, in a corner of her mind, doubts about what really happened that day began to grow. "Champagne?" Linda's voice interrupted her thoughts. "Of course, I'm having the non-alcoholic version," she smiled proudly while gently stroking her belly. "Thank you," Eleanor accepted the glass. Linda leaned in and whispered, "By the way, how have you been since then?" "Falling down the stairs, that was really unfortunate." Eleanor's hand trembled. There was a hint of mockery in Linda's words. "I'm fine," she answered quietly. "I came to celebrate your happiness." "Really?" Linda tilted her head. "Brad's father is buying us a new house. In Newton's upscale neighborhood. It's the perfect environment for raising children." Eleanor just smiled. Behind Linda's words, there was always a sense of competition. "Eleanor," Martha touched her arm. "Are you okay?" Eleanor nodded. "Yes. Just a little. Would you like to step outside for a break?" "No, I'm fine," Eleanor renewed her determination. "Today is special. I'm just here to celebrate my sister's happiness." Martha looked at her with concern. I understand you want to reconcile with your family, but don't hurt yourself. Eleanor carefully took out the wrapped box from her bag. Once I give her this, I'm sure she'll be pleased. She didn't know that Martha had been waiting at the bottom of the stairs that day. That after Eleanor was taken to the hospital, Martha had overheard a conversation between her parents and sister. And that today, Martha had turned on the voice recorder on her smartphone. Eleanor moved to approach Linda. In the center of the venue, Linda was laughing, surrounded by her friends. Eleanor hesitated for a moment but quickly made up her mind. This was her only chance for reconciliation. Holding the box with both hands, she began walking toward Linda. The atmosphere in the room seemed to suddenly change. Eleanor took a deep breath and put on a smile. Linda, congratulations, Eleanor said gently. This is a present for you and the baby. The conversations in the room gradually quieted, and all eyes turned to Eleanor and Linda. The wrapping paper was tied with a pale blue ribbon, and inside was the top-of-the-line baby care set she had carefully selected. An organic cotton blanket, baby clothes from a famous designer, and a set of handcrafted wooden toys. All items Eleanor had chosen with care. Thank you, Linda said as she accepted the box. Her voice was sweet, but her eyes glinted coldly. Eleanor then took out a smaller box. And this is a token of gratitude for my parents. To celebrate the birth of their new grandchild. Raymond and Judith looked surprised. It was rare for Eleanor to give gifts to her parents. How thoughtful, Judith said, but her voice was tinged with suspicion. Linda slowly began to unwrap the present. The room fell silent, with only the sound of paper tearing echoing. She opened the lid and looked at the contents. For a moment, a look of surprise flashed in her eyes, but it quickly turned into a cold smile. What lovely presents, Linda said, though she was clearly acting. Just like my sister, practical and expensive. Eleanor smiled. I hope you like them. Linda placed the box on the table and suddenly stood up. Her expression changed. Something she had been hiding seemed to surface. But to be honest. Linda changed her tone. A gift from someone who had a miscarriage? How unfortunate. The air in the room froze. Eleanor couldn't believe her ears. What did you say? Didn't you hear me? Linda raised her voice. I said a gift from someone who had a miscarriage is unfortunate. A present from someone who lost a baby is bad luck. The guests gasped. Some turned away, while others awkwardly stared at the floor. Eleanor's cheeks burned, and her heart pounded fiercely. Linda, that's... Eleanor managed to say. What? It's the truth, Linda waved her hand and turned to her friends. You all probably don't know, but my sister lost a baby 2 years ago. She fell down the stairs. She's really a careless person. Tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes. She never imagined such cruelty from her own flesh and blood sister. With a trembling voice, she said, I just wanted to celebrate your happiness. The atmosphere in the room changed. One of Linda's friends, a young woman, stood up and said, Linda, that's terrible. Shut up. Suddenly, Judith's voice echoed through the room. She was staring at Eleanor with an expression full of anger. You always cause problems. On Linda's special day, too. Eleanor was shocked into silence. She hadn't done anything wrong. She had only given a present. Mom, Be quiet. Judith shouted. Don't upset your sister. What if she has a miscarriage too? At that moment, Judith ran to the kitchen and returned seconds later. In her hands was a large pot that had been used to heat the party punch. Steam was rising, indicating the liquid inside was very hot. Mom, what are you doing? Eleanor took a step back. You've always been the problem child, Judith said, holding the pot with both hands and advancing. Always thinking you're the best and putting Linda down. But today is different. Today is Linda's day. Eleanor froze in terror. She couldn't believe this situation was real. Her mother was threatening her. Please, calm down. Calm down? Judith laughed. When you're trying to ruin Linda's happiness? Judith, stop, Raymond said, but he didn't move. In his eyes were fear and something else. Guilt, perhaps? Please, Mom, Eleanor said with a trembling voice. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. It's too late. With that cry, Judith tilted the pot and splashed the hot water toward Eleanor. The hot liquid hit Eleanor's chest and arms, and she screamed in agony. Serves you right. Linda clapped her hands, laughing. Now my sister will never get in my way again. Eleanor collapsed to the floor, writhing in pain. The hot water burned through her dress to her skin, and intense pain shot through her entire body. Her screams echoed throughout the room. But in the next moment, something unexpected happened. That's enough. Martha shouted, rushing to Eleanor's side. Call an ambulance. Linda's sister-in-law, Carol, also stood up and cried, What are you doing? She immediately took out her cell phone and began dialing 911. Martha knelt beside Eleanor, taking off her own cardigan and pressing it against her burns. You'll be all right, Eleanor. Help is coming. This is all being recorded. Martha stood up and held up her smartphone. I've recorded this entire assault as evidence. The room erupted into chaos. Guests backed away in horror and shock, and some raised angry voices. Judith and Linda stood frozen. You're insane, Carol said. I'm calling the police. Raymond turned pale and collapsed into a chair. What have we done? Martha cradled Eleanor protectively and said, This is the last time. I won't let you hurt Eleanor anymore. In the center of the room, Eleanor was half conscious from pain and shock. But something was beginning to change in her heart. Amidst the self-blame and fear she had carried for years, a small light was beginning to appear. She was not alone. There were people who would protect her. Eleanor's eyes opened, and she saw the chaos around her. Fear was etched on Linda and Judith's faces. They realized they could no longer control her. Raymond sat speechless, seemingly facing the consequences of his actions for the first time. And in Eleanor's ears, the sound of sirens began to grow louder. The ambulance and police were approaching. The time had come for the truth to be revealed. Martha knelt beside Eleanor again and held her hand. It's over now. I won't let them hurt you ever again. Eleanor nodded weakly. Though her consciousness was fading, memories that had been suppressed for a long time began to resurface in her mind. That accident on the stairs. Was it really an accident? What was the truth? Outside the room, the sirens of the ambulance and police were approaching. Eleanor didn't know what would happen next. But one thing was certain, her life would change forever from today. And although this change was terrifying, it was also liberation from the chains that had bound her for so long. Finally, before her vision darkened, Eleanor looked firmly at Martha's face. Thank you. Martha squeezed her hand. White ceiling. The smell of antiseptic. And the distant sound of mechanical beeping. Eleanor gradually regained consciousness. She was lying in a hospital bed. Bandages were wrapped around her chest and arms, and an N4 was connected to her arm. Eleanor, a gentle voice called. She moved her gaze and saw a female doctor standing beside her bed. The middle-aged woman in a white coat wore a warm smile. I'm Dr. Sarah Johnson. You were brought to the emergency room. Eleanor tried to speak, but her throat was dry. Take your time, Dr. Johnson said, offering her water. You have second-degree burns from hot water. There are moderate burns on your chest and arms, but with proper treatment, you should make a full recovery. Eleanor drank a little water, and her memories gradually returned. The baby shower. Linda's words. And her mother Judith's actions. Martha. Your friend. She's waiting outside. She's spoken with the police too, it seems. Police. The word made Eleanor tense up. Stay calm, Dr. Johnson gently held her hand. You're the victim. No one is blaming you. Eleanor took a deep breath. How long will I be here? At least overnight for observation, Dr. Johnson said, and after a slight hesitation, added, Eleanor, when I examined your body, I noticed something concerning. Eleanor looked at the doctor's serious expression. There are old scars on your back and legs. These are not the kind of marks that would come from accidents. Eleanor closed her eyes. She knew. For years, she had hidden those scars. Traces of violence that her family called a discipline. We're trained to recognize signs of abuse, Dr. Johnson said quietly. Have you been abused for many years? At that moment, the door to the room opened, and Martha entered. Her eyes were red, clearly showing signs that she had been crying. Eleanor? Martha rushed to her bedside. Are you okay? Are you in pain? Eleanor smiled weakly. Martha, thank you. Dr. Johnson smiled at the two of them and said, I'll let you two talk alone, then left the room. Only the two of them remained in the room. Martha took Eleanor's hand and cried. I was so scared. To see you go through something like that. It's thanks to you, Eleanor said. If you hadn't been there. Martha took a deep breath. Her expression changed to one filled with determination. Eleanor, I can't hide it anymore. There's something I need to tell you. Eleanor stared at her. Martha's face had the distinctive look of someone who had been keeping a secret for years. Your miscarriage, it wasn't an accident. At those words, Eleanor's heart began to race. Deep down, she had always suspected it. That day, I was planning to pick you up, so I was waiting in front of your parents' house, Martha continued. And I saw you fall down the stairs. But it wasn't a fall. Linda and Judith pushed you. Eleanor gasped. Fragmented memories began to connect in her head. The strong impact from behind. The faint laughter before falling. The cold attitude of her family at the hospital. Why didn't you tell me? Eleanor asked in a trembling voice. Martha wiped away her tears. I wanted to protect you. And I wasn't sure you would believe me. You were always trying to believe in your family. But today I couldn't stand it anymore, Martha said. I couldn't watch them hurt you again. She took out her smartphone and said, I recorded everything as evidence. Linda and Judith have been taken away by the police. And other testimonies are coming in. Carol has testified, and neighbors and Linda's friends have been in touch. People who had witnessed the abuse from your family over the years. Eleanor listened in disbelief. Had her suffering been known to many people, yet no one had tried to help her? Everyone was afraid, Martha said, as if reading her thoughts. Because your father held power in the community. But now, people are beginning to speak the truth. Eleanor looked out the window. The evening sky was beginning to turn purple. The world hadn't changed, but something inside her felt fundamentally different. I've blamed myself for years, Eleanor said quietly. I thought I lost my baby because I was careless. My mother and sister. Her voice caught. Martha squeezed her hand tightly. It's not your fault. Your family deceived you. But it's over now. At that moment, there was a knock on the door, and two police officers entered, an older man and a younger woman. Excuse us, the male officer said. You're Eleanor Williams? How are you feeling? I'm okay, Eleanor answered. I'm Detective Davis, and this is Detective Parker, he introduced themselves. We'd like to talk to you, if you're up to it. Eleanor nodded. I'll talk. About everything. For the next hour, Eleanor spoke, for the first time in her life, about the years of abuse she had suffered from her family. Starting with psychological abuse during childhood, manipulation and isolation as an adult, and finally the incident where they pushed her down the stairs while she was pregnant. When she finished speaking, she was tired, but at the same time, she felt a sense of liberation from a burden. Ms. Williams, thank you for your courage, Detective Parker said. These testimonies are extremely important. What happens now? Eleanor asked. Judith Williams and Linda Harrison are currently in custody, Detective Davis explained. They are expected to be charged with assault and battery. And we are beginning an investigation into the incident regarding your past miscarriage. Eleanor nodded. It didn't feel real. Furthermore, Detective Parker continued, it seems the video that Martha recorded has leaked to social media. Many people are supporting you. The video leaked? Eleanor was surprised. Martha apologetically squeezed her hand. It wasn't me. It seems Carol shared it. But maybe that's for the best. They can't hide the truth anymore. Eleanor sank deep into the bed. She was scared to think about what lay ahead. But at the same time, she felt liberated from the chains that had bound her for years. She was no longer alone. And she hadn't done anything wrong. Rest now, Detective Davis said. We'll talk more tomorrow. After the police officers left the room, Eleanor and Martha silently held hands. No words were necessary. They both felt they had taken a step in a long battle. Tomorrow is the real beginning, Martha said. Eleanor nodded. An unknown path lay before her. It was frightening yet full of hope. 6 months had passed, and Eleanor stood in the courtroom, dressed in a black suit with a calm expression. Martha and Carol sat on either side of her, providing support. Eleanor looked at her former family. They were changed. Judith had grown thin and aged, Linda sat with her head down, wearing no makeup. Raymond had completely white hair, and his former dignity had vanished. The moment the verdict was announced, Eleanor felt an unexpected emotion. Not a sense of victory, but a quiet feeling of release. A long nightmare was ending, and a new chapter was about to begin. What had been revealed during the trial was that Linda's pregnancy was a complete lie. The baby shower had been a stage set to trap Eleanor and mentally break her down. Linda had lied to her husband Brad as well. When this fact came to light, Brad filed for divorce. Outside the courthouse, Eleanor was speaking with representatives from victim support groups. She had begun activities to raise awareness about domestic abuse by sharing her own experiences. She appeared strong, no longer a woman cowering in the shadows of her past. What will you do next? Martha asked. I'm going to establish a new foundation, Eleanor smiled. To support victims of domestic violence. I want to focus especially on psychological abuse, which is harder to see from the outside. 3 months later, in the prison visiting room, Eleanor had made an unexpected decision. She had come to see her family. Why did you come? Linda asked, wearing a prison uniform, looking wary. There's something I wanted to give you. Eleanor took a small box out of her bag. The present I really wanted to give you that day. Inside was a letter. A message she had written from the heart about what family means. And the feelings she had carried for a long time, and her determination to move forward nonetheless. Why? Judith wept. Why do you forgive us? I don't forgive you, Eleanor said quietly. But I don't want to be controlled by hatred. I'm going to look forward and live my life now. I just wanted to give you a chance to reflect on your actions. For the first time, the three showed genuine expressions of regret. A deep remorse that couldn't be expressed in words was visible in their eyes. Raymond choked on his words. We did something unforgivable. Yes, Eleanor stood up. But my life is just beginning. On Thanksgiving Day, Eleanor's apartment was bustling with Martha, Carol, and friends from her support group. Warm dishes lined the table, and laughter filled the room. Let's make a toast, Eleanor raised her glass. To true family. Not bound by blood, but by love and respect. Outside the window, snow had begun to fall quietly. The beginning of a new season. And a symbol of Eleanor's new life. The courage to overcome the past and walk together with the family you've chosen, that is true strength, she smiled. And we all possess that strength.